Would you like to paint a beautiful cloud with watercolor but feel frustrated about your result? Cloudscape is one of the most beautiful and scary subjects to paint with watercolor, especially those majestic, volumetric cumulus cloud. It just seems like the more you try to create a massive volume of the cloud, the dirtier it gets. So today I want to share some tips with you that might give you an easier time painting clouds. Hi, this is Eric from Café Watercolor. Cloud is a beautiful natural phenomenon that we never get tired of looking at. But this timeless subject can be very tricky to paint with watercolor, especially when we try to interpret the softness and volume of the clouds. To create those soft, wispy edges and the smooth transitions from light to dark, we have to use wet-on-wet technique. But that's often where the problem arises. The wash becomes muddy and dirty and even starts to have cauliflower edges. And the more you try to fix it, the worse it gets. I understand because I have been there, and honestly, it is still a nerve-wracking experience every time I paint a cloudy sky. I can go into a painting with my head stuck in a cloud, pun intended, only to end up with a failed attempt. So you are not alone, but over time I've learned a few tricks that drastically improve my success rate. So here are 5 tips I want to share with you today about painting clouds, and then I will do a very quick demo to put those tips into practice, and then I will share you the process of this painting and show you how to do it from start to finish. So here are the 5 tips. Number 1, don't draw first. Because painting sky and cloud in watercolor is riskier, you can just boldly start your wash with minimum drawings. After you are done, the wash is dry, and you are happy with it, then you can start drawing. This can lower the risk of wasting your time as well as help you to relax when painting cloud, since you haven't done any drawing yet. Number 2, pre-wet your paper. Cloud is mostly done during the wet-on-wet stage, so pre-wetting your paper instead of doing a direct color wash can make this step much easier. You will be able to get that blue sky with soft cloud easily when you pre-wet the paper. Just remember to leave a certain area dry if you want a hard edge for your thick cumulus cloud, so you can have both lost and found edges for your cloudscape. Number 3, use a fine mist spray bottle. If you want to give yourself more time, you can use a fine mist spray bottle to slow down the drying time. I usually give it a bit of spray every 4 to 5 minutes as needed. Remember to use a fine mist spray bottle. If the water droplets are too big from your spray bottle, it can mess up the wash. And don't spray too close. I usually keep my spray bottle around 40 centimeters away, just float a bit of mist and you are good. Remember, we are just trying to keep it moist, not re-wet it again. Too much water will affect the wash you already have. Number 4, switch to a nylon brush as the wash is drying. When your wash is damp but not moist anymore, it's good time to switch to a nylon brush. You can check by looking at your paper. The wash should have less sheen on it at this stage, and you can still feel a bit of moisture when you gently touch it with the back of your finger. Mix a thicker mixture and gently lay the darker color on top. Cauliflower edges are usually due to the wetness of your brush being more than the wetness of your paper. A nylon brush doesn't absorb as much water, so it is safer to use at this stage. And when you lay down the darker color, do it gently with the tip of your brush. Don't push your brush down and scrub. And number 5, use a paper towel to lift your paint. If you accidentally get too heavy-handed or put too much moisture on your wash, don't panic. Take a paper towel and press it gently. This will immediately get rid of the excessive paint and water, and you will get your light back. This is very useful to lift and fix some areas. I often paint a bit more dark color wet onto wet when it is still moist, and form a clean paper towel into a point and use it to get some light back. And of course, don't overdo it or you will disrupt the flow of your wash. Now I hope these 5 tips can help you with your watercolor cloud, and now let's put this into practice by painting a small cloud scene. And after that, I will show you the process of my recent painting, show you a complete painting from start to finish. Before we start, if you find my content helpful, consider giving it a like and subscribe. So without further ado, let's practice together. Alright, so we're gonna do a very quick cloud painting practice with a very small paper. So this is a 10 by 7 paper, so as you can see, quite small. I often suggest students to start off with small papers because it is easier to do wet onto wet. If the paper is too big, you need to start worrying about different areas of stages of dryness, and it will be genuinely a lot more stressful to do. So start off small and work your way up. So the mixture for the sky color, I typically use cobalt blue and add a little bit of phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is usually a little bit warmer, so adding more phthalo blue will make a warmer blue. So mix it according to the sky you're painting. Now for the thicker cloud, which is also the dark side of the cloud, I will add some burnt umber into the cobalt blue to make it a little bit grayer and darker. And if you want to warm up the gray, you can add a little bit of orange. And that will make the gray a lot warmer while still making it a gray color. And if we add alizarin crimson, we can make it a little bit more purplish. So that's pretty much the colors that I am using mostly when I'm painting clouds. So let's get started. The drawing is going to be very simple. I'm simply going to make a few marks that is going to represent where the clouds are. So a little bit of cloud here. The cloud is kind of rolling up. And you usually have a flat base for the cumulus cloud. It's probably due to air pressure, temperature, and things like that. I'm not a scientist, so I am not going to give you some scientific fact about that, but a lot of the cumulus clouds are a flat base. So we just draw some straight lines. This is honestly a little bit more drawing than I used to when it comes to cloud, but that's about it. So now the first thing I'm going to do is to pre-wet the paper. This will make your wet onto wet a lot easier. Do watch out for the areas that you want to keep the hard edge, like over here. I want to keep the top of the cloud hard edges, so I'm going to paint around them, leave them dry. But on the bottom here, I do want some softness, so I'm going to take the water in. So the wet area is going to be soft shapes and soft edges, while the dry area, if I paint on it, is going to be hard edges. So wet it according to the edge quality that you want. I will say that you want to stay a little bit loose, so don't get bogged down by that too much. Sometimes just wet it a little bit randomly. Just watch out for some hard edges that you want to leave, but the rest of it, keep it loose. And now if we lift the paper, you can see the sheen on the paper. That will show you where you wetted the paper. Now you can usually tell by just looking at it, but sometimes it might be a little bit hard to see, depends on the angle of your light. So move around a little bit. Now I paint tilted, so the water will naturally flow down. So most of the moisture is going to gather on the bottom of the painting. So in this case, I need to add just a little bit more moisture on the top until it really soaked in. And you can also spray a little bit of the mist on top to keep it moist longer. So now all is set. Time to do our wet onto wet. We'll mix a little bit more blue color for the sky. Now do remember that because there's already water moisture on the paper, whatever you put down is going to get diluted by the water that is already on the paper. So as you can see, it looks pretty intense on the palette, but once you put it on the paper, it starts to become a little bit diluted. And you need to take that into account that watercolor dry lighter. So if your paint is not thick enough, if there's no enough mixtures, the paint is going to dry too light and your sky is going to turn out too white. So here, as you can see, anywhere that has been wetted, the edges are soft. And here I just try to add a little bit more blue before it is dry. I have very limited time to add more colors on the top because it is drying pretty rapidly, especially on the top, because again, the moisture is flowing down. So here I'm using a soft brush and actually re-wet the bottom a little bit more. There's some clean areas that can just use a little bit more water because they're starting to dry. And also because I want to start to paint some dark side of the cloud. Some of the thicker clouds that has more dark and shadows. So just re-wet them. Just make sure you don't touch the edges, especially on the top, otherwise the wash is going to flow and you're gonna mess up the edge. So the top part is best not to touch it now because they are starting to dry pretty rapidly. So it's best to just let it settle and move on. Even if you don't like it 100%, sometimes the best thing you can do is just move on, let it go. So now I'm mixing a darker gray and start to paint into the wet area and create a soft dark shape. And now you can immediately start to see that we just created some volumes for the cloud. We have light and it softly transition into dark. It's not too dark, it's more like a middle value, pretty much the same value as the blue sky. Value and color contrast, we start to create form. And because we left some area dry, you are going to see some hard edges. And that is okay, we don't need to keep everything soft edges because it's going to look very mushy. Especially the top, we want some hard edges to create that volume. And now it is starting to become damp, so I switched to a nylon brush for more wet onto wet work. Again, nylon brush absorb less water, and also if you mix the mixture a little bit drier, a little bit more paint, it's going to avoid cauliflower edges. So here, just use the tip of my brush and drop in the darker mixtures, and you can see it's still soft, it's still spread out a little bit, but there's not enough water for it to create cauliflower edges. Again, cauliflower edges is caused due to too much water in your brush. You have more moisture on your brush than the paper. So the paper is going to try to absorb as much water as possible when you drop it down, and that pushes the pigments away and create the cauliflower edges. So at this stage, the paper is still a little bit damp. So if your mixture is drier, it will work. Now I'm using a paper towel, and as you can see, it's almost kind of like painting the light. But before the wash is completely dry, I can lift the paint and get some light back. It is very useful if you use it at the right time. Then a paper towel won't do much good unless you scrub it. But at this stage, when the wash is still moist and damp, paper towel is a great tool to absorb and get rid of some of the paint and water. So here I spray a little bit of water, buy myself more time. However, I sprayed just a little bit too close, so you can see that little droplet there is messing up with the wash. Not that big of a deal since this is just a practice, but do watch out and use a fine mist spray bottle and spray in the distance. You only have so much time to work on it. No matter how much you spray, too much water is actually going to start wash off the paint, so you don't want to do that as well. Just some gentle mist will do. Will just buy you a little bit more time. But eventually it's going to dry whether you like it or not, so use your time wisely and don't push it too far. So I'm just adding a little bit of clouds in the distance. Again, this is a practice, so I didn't really plan all that much, so I'm just gonna do it randomly. Using my paper towel, get some more light back. And now this area is dry, so I need to scrub it with clean water and press it with paper towel, and I can still lift a little bit. So the surface is dry, but the underneath is still not completely dry yet, so you can use a damp brush with a little bit of clean water and scrub it, press it with paper towel, and you can still get some softness back. So just a little bit more wet onto wet, adding some more dark. Jump ahead a little bit. And now the wash is pretty much dry. And the last thing that I can do is maybe soften some of the hard edges. Like this area has this awkward hard edge on the bottom. So I'm going to scrub it a little bit with clean water, with a nylon brush, press it with a paper towel, and it does soften a little bit. Now you are not going to be able to get rid of the paint completely, but it will help somewhat. So at this stage, you want to soften some of the edges, make some of the area feels like they're glowing. You can do that. Again, don't do it everywhere, don't overdo it, but just a few areas that will make a bit more interesting variety of edges. So that's it for our quick cloud practice. Hope this is helpful for you. Alright, now let's take a look at another process. Now this is a complete painting. The reference is taken when we were on our way to Vancouver, Canada from Seattle. So the same process, pre-wet the paper for soft edges. An area like here where I want the hard edges, I'm not going to wet it. So now I start to paint some sky color into the area that was wet. So here you can see the paint flow down naturally because I paint tilted, and that is a wet area. So I went over with a brush and evened out that paint streak. So here is the hard edge. I need to make sure that this edge is hard because that is the top of that big cumulus cloud. Turn the paper around just so that the paint will flow back up a little bit, make it a little bit more even. Now just going over with clean water again, and once again preserve the hard edges, just some area that needs a little bit more moisture. Come back in, drop in more blue color. Now I use a paper towel. The wash is still moist, so perfect time for me to get rid of some of the paint. And now you just see the top left, I create that nice soft edge of the cloud. And here also, I am very carefully use the paper towel to get rid of the beads. The water bead is scattered there a little bit too much, and I worry that if I just leave it be, it's going to create a watermark, which is similar to cauliflower edges because the top is going to dry, but there's so much water in the bottom, it's going to seep back in. And now I start to paint the dark in the cloud. Wash is still quite moist, so I can use a soft brush and paint to get some soft shapes, soft edges. I also spray a little bit of water to keep the wash moist a little bit longer. This stage is quite stressful, despite that it goes by very fast, because you really need to look at where the things are starting to dry, and you have a few seconds to make the decision where you need to paint. Because if you think too long, if you hesitate too much, the wash is starting to become dry and you lose that softness of the cloud. So some of the area you want to leave it light, some dark, and now you can see that we start to create some of the wonderful soft shapes inside of the cloud. So the bottom is a little bit drying out, so I go over with a clean brush and re-wet the area so that I can go back in and add a bit more dark, add a bit more wet onto wet, add some dark color here, and you can really feel the volume of the cloud now. Now you need to watch out for your mixture, make sure it is dry enough, you have enough paint. I want to get some cloud back here, so I come back in with a paper towel, get rid of that sky color there, and now we have more cloud. So again, right now is a good time to do that, but as you can see, some of the area is already dry, so paper towel is not going to have effect over those. But for the area that are still moist, especially the bottom of the paper, it still work out very well, like over here. So now I switch to a nylon brush to paint a little bit more detail. So it really depends on your observation. Observe the wetness of your painting and switch to the brush accordingly. So now I mix a darker mixture and start to add more dark into the cloud. So I realized that I painted a little bit too much here. I lose a bit too much light. So I come back in, scrub it with some water, and I just get rid of some paint. And now we get the light back. If you compare that side by side, you can see how much difference it made. So observe and react to the stage of your painting and really look at your painting. Don't paint mindlessly. Every brushstroke, everything you do should have a purpose. And if you observe enough, you can catch some mistakes and you can catch things that you can adjust before it is completely dry. And now you can see that the brushstroke that I paint, especially on the higher area, it started to become hard edges. So it's dry enough, but also not bone dry. I can scrub it a little bit and get some light back. So there you go, get some more light back on the top. And to change, soften some of the hard edges. And here just add a little bit more textures on the cloud. So at this stage, I look at the cloud, I look at the sky, and it feels pretty good. It got enough light and it also have quite a bit of volume that I want. So a good time to continue down, paint some of the flat base, just to get a little bit more structure for the cloud. So the left part, I want to make it just a little bit darker, but unfortunately it's starting to become too dry. Still a little bit damp, but it's getting very dry. So if I come back in with paint, even with nylon brush, it can start ruin the wash. So I will need to just let it dry and maybe come back in with a glaze. So again, observe your watercolor and really work with it. When you're painting watercolor, you really need to let go that sense of control, because if you try to control everything that it does, it's usually going to disappoint you because you are working against drying time, where the water flows, and things like that. If you want absolute control, use other mediums like oil and acrylic, pencil or paper, or even just digital painting. But for watercolor, part of the fun is to work with it. So every time before it is dry, it's always fun to just observe and react and work with the watercolor. So now I start to do the drawing. After I am happy with the sky, I start to do the drawing. I didn't do the drawing in the first place because I want to make sure that I like the sky. And only after I am happy with the sky, I start to do the drawing, because the rest of the painting is much easier and harder for me to mess up. So I start with the sky and the cloud first, and now I start to paint the rest of the painting. So a bit more dark cloud in the distance. Just make sure that I don't paint into the barn. Actually, right now, just by looking at it, I feel like the sky looks good as is. Might not even need the ground. But I do want to finish the painting, so I continue on. So start to paint the grass color, which is copal turquoise with Hansen yellow deep, to mix that warm green color, grass under the sun. So despite there's huge amount of clouds in the sky, it is still getting sunlight. So this often happens in the Pacific Northwest. The storm cloud is very localized. So I remember this trip, we passed through some rain clouds, maybe for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then the sky started to clear up and the storm is behind us, or in this case on the side of us, and we're getting the sun. The grass is getting the sun, just that there's still some storm clouds lingering around. And that's how it creates such a dramatic scene with huge, heavy cumulus clouds, storm clouds, but the overall light is still very bright, very sunny. So I started to paint the trees in the background, the pine trees, the bushes. So compared to the photo, I actually make them just a little bit bigger because the paper is not that big. So I make it just a little bit bigger so it will be easier to read. But the sense of scale is still there. You still feel like these clouds are massive. So paint the cloud and start to paint some smaller details. Some bushes in the midground. So I feel like the ground, the dry grass in the bottom and the foreground is a bit too light, so I go over with a glaze. Once I glaze it over, I do some wet onto wet again. It's one of the ways that you can get some more wet onto wet soft shapes when you glaze over a wash. So whenever I paint a scenery like these, it's always tough because I look at the photo and I look at my painting. It is pretty much impossible for me to recapture the majestic feeling of the nature. It's really not comparable. But at the same time, you also need to realize that your job is not a camera. You're not trying to capture every nuances. You're not trying to just copy what you see. You are there to interpret the thing in your own way. So you are retelling the story with your own painting, with your own visual language, in your own way. So your audience is trying to look at, to enjoy the story through your eyes, through your painting. If they want to see some photorealistic copy of the scene that you see, might as well just let them see the photo. So here I want to make this left side of the cloud a bit darker, so I took a risk. I re-wet the area gently with some water, and I just add a bit more dark paint using the nylon brush. This move is quite dangerous because there's already some paint layer on top, and if I use too much water, it will melt the paint and mess up the wash. And here is the finished painting. I hope you enjoyed this painting and the process. I'm so glad I get to share this with you. I hope this video helped you with your cloud painting. With enough practice and as you develop a keen eye to observe your watercolor process, I am confident that you will be able to capture the essence of a beautiful cloudscape in your painting. That's it for this video. I'm Eric from Café Watercolor. Hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are. See you next time. God bless.